In the 1970s, families packed their cars on Friday afternoons and drove across America without reservations, without GPS, and without knowing exactly where they would sleep. This was how road trips worked then. No apps, no routing algorithms. Just a folded map, a full tank, and the understanding that motels had vacancy signs for a reason. The kitchen counter was the departure point. Your mother had made sandwiches the night before. Real sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, not plastic. Your father checked the oil while you stood in the driveway watching the Chevy's trunk being loaded. A plaid suitcase went in first. Then the cooler filled with glass bottles of Coke. Your siblings claimed their spots in the back seat, and everyone knew that once you left, you did not turn around. The car itself was a small world. No cup holders, no screens. The radio played AM stations that faded in and out as you drove, and you learned every song by the third state. Your legs felt long against vinyl seats. The windows rolled down by hand. Wind came through them hot and real. Somewhere around mile 40, someone asked, "Are we there yet?" And your father smiled in the rearview mirror because he had no idea, and that was perfectly fine. This is how Americans moved across their own country in that decade. Not optimized, not managed, but real. The interstate highway system was already complete by the 1970s, though many people still preferred the numbered routes and the actual small towns. A Rand McNally Road atlas cost about $3. You studied it the night before, tracing your finger along the red lines, and your father might have noted landmarks, a big state sign, a river crossing, a mountain range. That was navigation. It was enough. Motels were everywhere. The Holiday Inn was the reliable choice, with its green sign and the promise of a clean room for $30 to $40 a night. Howard Johnson's orange roof appeared predictably every 100 miles or so. But the real game was the gamble. You drove until late afternoon, and then you started watching the roadside. The vacancy signs lit up, and your father, with no reservation and no phone call, would simply drive into a parking lot and walk inside. The clerk, always a real person, never a computer, would check a ledger or a keyboard behind the desk. They would tell you the price. You would decide in seconds, yes or no. Often yes. If no, you drove 2 miles and tried the next one. This was not stressful. It was how things worked. Your mother might have preferred a Holiday Inn, but a small independent motel was cheaper, and you stayed there anyway. The room had 2 beds, a television with 3 channels, and sometimes magic fingers. You had running water and a roof. You were fine. Gas stations still had attendants. You pulled up, a man in a uniform came out, and you told him whether you wanted him to fill the tank, check your oil, and clean the windshield. He did all 3. You paid cash. There were road maps on a spinning rack inside, free or a nickel. You looked at them standing up, right there in the station, planning the next day's drive while eating a candy bar from the shelf. The motel room at 7 in the evening was its own small landscape. You turned on the television. The air conditioner hummed and smelled faintly of metal. Your mother unpacked the suitcases and hung your father's shirts on wire hangers that came with a cardboard collar still attached. You bounced on the bed because you were supposed to, and then your father told you to stop because the neighbors could hear through the walls. Your mother went to the vending machine downstairs with some dollar bills and came back with ice in a bucket. She poured cold water for you. Your father changed his shirt. Everyone felt both extremely tired and wide awake. Your siblings lay on their bed and watched television with the sound turned low. You might have eaten cold sandwiches from the cooler. You might have gone to a nearby diner and had meatloaf and pie. The room had 2 double beds, a small table, and a bathroom with thin towels. There was no air conditioning in many of them. You opened the window and heard the traffic from the highway, the sound of other cars still moving in the dark. You fell asleep around 9 o'clock because you were genuinely tired from the car, from sitting, from newness. In the morning, you checked out without being asked. You paid at the front desk. No receipt, no survey, no email address. The man behind the counter said, "Have a good trip," and you left. The beds were already being cleaned by someone who came in after you walked out the door. By noon, you were back in the car. The luggage was reloaded. The cooler was refilled with fresh ice at a gas station. The map was spread across someone's lap, and your father was saying, "If we push hard, We can make it to the next big town by dinner time. He had no way to check traffic. He did not know if a storm was coming. He estimated based on what he had always known, that if you drove about 50 to 60 miles an hour and stopped for a quick meal, you could cover 400 miles in a day. And he was usually right. The thing about this kind of travel was its uncertainty. You did not know if the motel would be clean. You did not know if you would be welcome. You did not know if the restaurant advertised on the road sign 50 miles back would be any good when you finally reached it. This was not a flaw. It was the condition. And because it was the condition for everyone, you accepted it. You arrived somewhere and discovered it for the first time. That arrival meant something because you had not seen photographs of it first. You had not read comments. You had not optimized. Navigation was a skill. Someone in the car had to read the map while the car was moving. You had to watch the mile markers, count the turns, listen for the name of the next town on a road sign. If you missed something, you might have driven an extra 20 miles before you realized. Your father might have said, "We've gone too far," and you turned around. This happened. It was not a tragedy. It was just more driving. The day was longer, but you still got where you were going. The motels were independent businesses, often family-run. The person who rented you the room might have been the owner. They knew their own town. If you asked where to eat, they pointed you somewhere real, somewhere local. They did not consult a computer. They knew. You went there. You met actual people serving actual food in actual restaurants. The meal was not guaranteed to be perfect, but it was real. And you went to bed having had an experience with place, not a transaction with a system. What changed was not the capacity to travel. What changed was that uncertainty became optional. And the moment uncertainty became optional, the entire experience transformed. Now you could know everything before you arrived. You could have a reservation. You could see photographs. You could read reviews. You could guarantee the experience. And in guaranteeing it, something quieted inside it. Not the goodness of travel, the surprise, the small discoveries, the moments when you did not know what would happen next and then something happened anyway, and it became a memory because it was not planned. You arrived at your destination, a relative's house, a beach town, the Grand Canyon, a lake, and you were dirty and tired and grateful. The car had carried you. The roads had unfolded. The motels had sheltered you. The restaurants had fed you. And all of it had happened without a single reservation, without a single digital instruction, with only a map and faith that things would work out. They always did. 40 years later, people remember these trips. Not the destination, always. Not the photographs, necessarily. But the moment when your father realized you were lost and pulled over to study the map under a streetlight. The way your mother's voice sounded when she said, "There. That's it," pointing at a motel sign. The taste of the burger at a small-town diner whose name you never learned. The feeling of your legs when you finally got out of the car. The way everyone was quiet in the darkness, heading somewhere, not knowing exactly when they would arrive. This kind of travel required something of you. It required patience. It required flexibility. It required the ability to turn around if you made a wrong turn, to stop somewhere different than you planned, to accept that the experience would be what it became, not what you had optimized it to be. It required faith in simple systems, a map, a tank of gas, the promise that somewhere along the way there would be a place to sleep. The 1970s road trip was not superior because it was harder. It was different because it was less knowable. And in that unknowability there was a kind of freedom. Your family moved across the country on Friday afternoon, slept in motels whose names were forgotten by the time you got home, ate food you had not chosen from an app, and arrived somewhere transformed by the journey itself, not optimized by it. That is how it worked then. And the people who lived it still remember. Not the hotels, the nights, not the restaurants, the taste, not the route, the feeling of not knowing what came next, and the certainty that something would.